President Ali is seen arriving in Latam Saturday for the start of the Regional Two-House Conference to address over 50 leaders of the First Peoples of Region 9, where there is a sizable population of the Makushi, Wapishan and YY peoples.
Sometimes people don't like to hear this. We have to invest more in Amerindian communities because there is a gap between you and the other communities in this country. And we have to bridge that gap. We will bridge that gap. And there must be no apologies in doing this. Because we have to recognize there is a gap. And we have to develop policies to bridge that gap. And that is what we are doing.
The leaders were in Latam for their annual gathering, called the National Two-House Council, but the meeting has been split up in smaller meetings of the village leaders from the various regions because of COVID-19. 8 government ministers were in Latam for this leg of the NTC meeting, intended to help village leaders prune and shape development projects in their respective villages.
You will benefit equally from the resources of oil and gas in your communities. There will be no distinction. There are those who would want to have distinction. There are those who want to have a model that separates or create a class structure. Under the PPP civic government, there will be no discrimination. All Guyanese will benefit equally from these resources.
In the development projects being planned for the region in the next decade, the President pledged that his government will respect the principle of free, prior and informed consent, a right enshrined in the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples that allows them to accept or reject any project that affects them or their territories.
This conference has to address in a substantive way the economic, social, and environmental, developmental concerns of the people of this region.
The President emphasized that indigenous communities will not be sidelined but integrated in the process of national development and committed to a genuine spirit of inclusion with indigenous communities. He said that the government will respect the rights of Guyana's First People and protect their just entitlement to lands, which has long been a thorny issue. The President said the PPPC government wants to ensure that the indigenous peoples are not deprived of lands they are entitled to. He said the government has already commenced a project to restore and establish a mechanism through which all land issues will be resolved. This mechanism, he said, will also deal and expedite the land titling process. The last national budget allocated $5.45 billion to indigenous communities, and this year a minimum of $300 million in presidential grants was set aside for 220 communities. The President handed over some of the presidential grants on Saturday, and some communities received tractors and trailers. Reporting for the newsroom, Neil Marks.